come, the women in their life are going to come with them. It's an understanding the reality that the man is the head of the house spiritually. Called to bring the family together to worship together. And we need to realize that worship is just not something we do here on Sunday mornings from 10 to quarter after 11. Worship is a way of life. Worship is the attitude that we bring towards life. Worship is the attitude that we bring, as Deuteronomy says, when we bring up our children, teach them while they're walking in the way. Sort of the idea of stop and smell the roses. Well, stop and smell the roses, but explain to your kids who created the roses. Stop and look at life and explain to your kids who has blessed you along the way. Worship is, yes, it's here, but also it's an attitude, it's a way of life that we take with our families, with our friends, of showing where our heart is aligned to. Which takes us back to number one. Our heart's got to be aligned to God first, to be a man of excellence. This is an interesting one. Growing up with my dad being a pastor, this is the one I love to throw at my dad. You know, he'd make me so mad. But I would quote this, say, Dad, you are not supposed to frustrate me. Oh, any of you ever do that to your parents? No? Yeah, I bet you did, Rick. Yeah. But yeah, I did. It was like, nope, Dad, don't frustrate me. Well, what's interesting with this is the fact that Paul says, fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. There is a difference between a father who is disciplining, and to discipline means to make a disciple, versus the punishment. We punish criminals. The discipline that we're called to do within our lives for ourselves and for our families is to make them, to strive to move them to become a disciple, disciplined disciple of Jesus Christ. What Paul is saying here is, dads, don't push those buttons that you know are going to get your kids fired up over. That you know that, man, they're going to get wrangled up over, they're going to just blow their top. But dads, you still need to, as the Old Testament says, train up a child in the way they will go. The Old Testament says, one passage a lot of people don't like, but spare the rod, spoil the child. I'm not saying corporal punishment, I'm not saying that, but we as a people, we as adults need to have discipline for our family. And there's the way that we can do it as dads, which can mold, disciple, direct our kids to the Lord, or it can push them away. I got a great friend out in South Dakota that he grew up on a dairy farm. Wonderful dad. I loved his dad, loved his mom. He had 7 kids in the family. But Dad had a tendency to sometimes blow his top. And he'd blow his top quite often on Sunday morning, milking the cows, because he was feeling anxious to get to church. He'd blow his top, swear at the cows, sort of cuss at the kids, get them all in the car, show up to church. Everything's fine. Man, for that family, as the kids grew up, they struggled with some of that. Some took hold of the Christian faith. Some have walked away from it. Why? Because in some respects, Dad provoked them to anger. Yes, Dad was a great dad, and I know he's with the Lord right now. I did his funeral service. A wonderful man. But there were some things that he did which caused the kids to question because of his anger. So as a dad, I'm not saying that we say to our kids, anything goes. Not at all. But we need to pick and choose. Not provoke them to anger, but still hold them to learn to be a disciple, a discipline of Jesus Christ. So whenever I would say this to my dad, hey, Dad, you're provoking me to anger, one thing he would say is, well, Greg, who really makes you mad? Okay, I'm the only one that can make myself mad, right? I mean, if I do something to any of you, you can get mad, you can blame me, but really, who has control over your emotions? You do. I don't. So you'd say, Greg, you're the one that has control over your emotions. I don't. But you'd also say, Greg, I'm trying to mold you, to discipline you, to disciple you. Becoming a man of excellence. The last point I just want to bring up. Oh yeah, this is the Deuteronomy passage. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you're at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. The final point of this whole Men of Excellence series. Probably didn't see that one coming, did you? Provide for your family. Provide for your family. We as men are called to work for our families, to provide the spiritual, the physical, the emotional needs that our families have. Not the wants that they have, but the needs that they have. If anyone will not work, neither shall they eat, says the Apostle Paul. I mean, we all remember the Mayflower story. And after, what was it, their second year, the compact said that if you're not going to work, you're not going to eat. And those were Christians. About half of them that came over on the Mayflower were Christians. And they said, no, you don't work, you don't eat. The reality that we as men need to step up and take our responsibility. Some of you were here last week. Remember the statistics I talked about? The fact that 60% of people in jail are there. They were raised without a father in the home. 70% of kids who are in juvenile delinquent homes don't have a dad. What does that say to the rest of us as dads, as men of excellence, as college-age kids, as teenage men? What does it say to us? But that we need to learn to provide for our family, and sometimes that means reaching out. And one of the great things that Calvary is doing right now is being involved with the Safe Family Program. A lot of families here have been involved with it. And the women and the men are men and women of excellence, saying, we want to provide a safe family for some kids for a short time. To provide for somebody else. But to be a man of excellence means, can you jump back one, Scott? It means that we will love God first. And in some respects, that's what I really just want you to walk out this morning thinking about. Thinking about how is your life aligned to God, Jesus Christ. How are you loving God first? What is that flesh that gets put on the bones of your spiritual life that shows that you are loving God first? You see, if we look at all these men that we talked about, Adam, Noah, Job, Joshua, Gideon, Barnabas, the question really is for all of them, they had a faith in God, they had a love for God first, and that moved them into action. So my question for you as you leave is, how are you loving God? How is that made manifest? How is that made real in your life, in your faith, in your families, with your friends, with your finances? It's interesting because really our time and our finances will prove what really we make number one or number two or number three. How we spend our time, how we spend our finances, is a pretty good indication of where our hearts are. When you leave this morning, just ask yourself, where am I with my heart being right with loving God first? And then, how is that made manifest in my life as a man of excellence with the people, family, and friends that I walk with? In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Lord, this morning as we come before you, Lord, I'd ask that you would bless these words, Lord, that this whole series of men of excellence, that, Lord, this is stuff I keep working on, and this week, Lord, I've been struggling with this, and the standard is set so high. Man, Lord,